Of all the beloved horror franchises, none has had a more rocky legacy than that of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. The original film, directed by Tobe Hooper, still stands as one of the masterpieces of horror cinema. The sequel, also directed by Hooper, while not as revered as its predecessor, has since grown a massive cult following. However, following two lackluster sequels, one of which starring a then unknown Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger, the series disappeared for just short of a decade. That was until 2003's big-budget remake by Platinum Dunes, which didn't garner the warmest critical response, but was a huge financial success and has since grown a following amongst the fan base. However, following a mediocre prequel film, the series went quiet once again until 2013 with the reboot Texas Chainsaw 3D. Working as a direct sequel to the original film, ignoring all previous entries, many were let down by the more heroic portrayal of the psychotic Leatherface. Poor critical reviews and a lukewarm box office resulted in the prequel film Leatherface sitting on a shelf until ultimately being dumped direct to DVD. Now, after going through production hell, Netflix has dumped another reboot with the latest film simply titled Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Set 50 years after the events of the original film, we follow a group of millennials attempting to gentrify a mostly abandoned Texas town. I say mostly as when the group arrives, they discover the town's last remaining residents, an elderly owner of an orphanage and her one hulking orphan. When confronted, the woman suffers a heart attack and ultimately dies en route to the hospital. With her death, we learn quite obviously that her large companion is in fact Leatherface, who quickly returns to his old ways, killing anyone in his way and wearing a mask made out of human skin. This time around, though, Leatherface is being hunted by the only survivor of his previous massacre, Sally Hardesty, who since her encounter in 1974 has waited for the day he would reappear so she can finally get her revenge. Now, I think it's important to address the most controversial aspect of this film, since this aspect is arguably what hurts this movie the most, and that is the inclusion of Sally. For those unaware, the original actress Marilyn Burns passed away in 2014. And it's one thing to recast the role, but the way that Sally is portrayed in this film is simply insulting. Her inclusion is so unnecessary. Half the time you forget she's even part of the movie. And when she ultimately does come into the story, she's taken out of it just as quickly. Now, this is nothing against the new actress. This is strictly against the writers and producers who decided to do a terrible ripoff of the 2018 Halloween film without any respect to the original. Another thing that hurts this film is the writing. The script is pretty bad. So much of the dialogue is modern day hipster lingo, and our main characters, the ones we're supposed to be rooting for, are just awful people. The only character worth anything is Lila, played by Elise Fisher, and that's mainly due to Fisher just being a really charming and talented actress. Not to say the other performers aren't good, but they're given nothing to work with. Plus, it's a very common trope for characters in horror films to make stupid decisions. But in this film, some of these characters might make the dumbest decisions out of any, especially coming from this franchise. So I went into this movie with pretty low expectation. And with that, was there anything I did enjoy about this latest film? Well, yes, actually. While it was a little too CGI heavy at times, the gore was pretty spectacular with some absolutely brutal kills. This is the only Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie to have a chainsaw massacre. I also appreciated that the film is blissfully short, only clocking in at a brisk 86 minutes. But similar to Venom Let There Be Carnage, it's not a good sign for your movie when one of the only good parts is that it's over quickly. Overall, Texas Chainsaw Massacre certainly isn't the worst this series has to offer, but the bar is so exponentially low that it's really saying nothing. Despite some great kills, there's not really a reason to watch this film, especially if you're a fan of the original. It's a lackluster sequel in a long line of lackluster sequels that feels like it's trying to cash in on the popularity of other horror reboots and legacy sequels, rather than being a satisfying follow-up to the original or just being its own thing. For SUTV Entertainment, I'm Adam Beam.